In ancient times, in the 7th year of the Eiroku era, in Shimadera domain, Marukami village, the ruler of the domain, Michiyasu Shimadera, sends a messenger to Lord Marukami, warning him to evacuate his people from Mount Marukami so that the ruler can build a castle. The ruler also delivers the beheaded head of one of the villagers as punishment for not accepting the order on the first try. Lord Marukami has the messenger killed by his men and vows to destroy the cruel ruler. Shimadera then declares war and takes his well-equipped soldiers to Marukami village to fight with Lord Marukami and his people. There, they are met with few people and Shimadera's troops charge towards them, feeling confident that they can defeat the small group of unarmed men. However, as the soldiers get close, the Marukami villagers raise their hands and discharge their powers by releasing dimension balls, which inflict holes in their victims towards their opponents, which leaves all the soldiers dead with huge gaps formed in different parts of their bodies. Shimadaram, as the only survivor, struggles to understand what happened. In the present time, university student Yoji Minamimaru Nanmaru, president of the New Skills Development Research Society Club, demonstrates his telekinetic powers by remotely punching a hole in a sheet of paper to the odd members of the club. However, Aki, one of the members of the club, is not impressed by the seemingly useless talent, tells Nanmaru to instead use his time to search for a job, and informs him that there has been a notice for him from a Professor Marukami posted on the notice board for the past 2 weeks. Surprised, Nanmaru goes to the teacher's lounge, searching for Professor Marugami, and learns that the professor's field of study is history and folklore, and he is away doing some research. Elsewhere, a young girl named Sachiko has a terrible dream in the middle of the night and is comforted by her grandmother. Back at the university, Nanmaru is approached by Tagaya, a fellow student, and taken to Professor Marugami's colleague, Professor Emi, who informs Nanmaru that the professor has been missing since he left for Marukami village for research to study the famous war between the Marukami tribe and Shimadera's soldiers. She adds that the secret to finding him lies in Nanmaru's family history, as he and the professor share a common ancestral lineage of the Marukami tribe. Elsewhere, construction company president Toshio Kuraish is murdered remotely in Marukami as he works late one night by the infliction of gaping holes on his body. A few days later, Professor Emi reveals to Tagaya and Nanmaru that Professor Marukami's wife has reported that her husband had been acting strangely in the days before his disappearance. Then she shows them a glass with a big hole cut out that the wife has claimed was produced by the professor, and asks Nanmaru to show her his talent to check if it's the same as the professor's. Nanmaru demonstrates his talents and shares his doubt that he could be of any help in Professor Marukami's search. Tagaya then shows the group the new report of Toshio's murder, detailing holes found in the victim's body, which has eerie similarities with the one on the professor's glass. This changes Nanmaru's mind, and he offers to go to Marukami village to the relief of Professor Emi. Back in ancient times, the sole survivor of the war, Shimadera is murdered remotely by Lord Marukami, who goes on to promise his men that he will protect their land at any cost. In Marukami, the murder of Toshio is still being investigated, as no leads have been found yet. During the investigation, it was revealed that Toshio's construction company was proposing to build a golf course on Mount Marukami, and that many people had taken to the streets to show their opposition to it. Professor Emi, Tagaya, and Nanmaru get to the small town amidst various speculations on the murder, and as the town prepares for its annual 7-day Tanabata festival, then Professor Emi goes around town asking for information on the missing professor, and if anyone has seen him, to no success, while Tagaya and Nanmaru go to a cafe where Sachiko works and where Nanmaru's last name is recognized by the locals, who treat him very well. Later in the day, while Tagaya and Nanmaru return to the hotel and discuss with the rest of the group the meaning of the festival, the town council comes and invites them to a feast, during which Nanmaru is referred to as Young Master and given a royal treatment. Unfortunately, the police come and interrupt this gathering to interrogate people about the murder of Tashio, claiming that all the people who opposed the idea of the golf course were in that room. The town council dismisses the police and the dinner goes well into the night. The next day, the group climbs Mount Marukami, which seems to be at the heart of all the mystery. On their way, the group is informed that since the festival preparation has started on top of the mountain, the general public is not allowed to pass through. Nanmaru uses his name and newfound prestige to pass through to the mountain, but the group is disappointed to find nothing but 7 cued stones. The next day, Sachiko visits Nanmaru at his hotel room, asks him to show her his powers, tries to give him an encrypted message about paying no attention to the strange things he might hear while he's in the village, and storms out before he can ask for an explanation. Professor Emi gathers the group and shares her suspicion that something is off in the village. All the people in town are covering something, and that Professor Marukami might even be imprisoned here, even though the people have sworn they have never seen him. She proposes that they should only stay for the festival, which is to be held the next day, to see if they can find any useful information, but urges them to be careful and to trust no one. Meanwhile, Takashi comes to see his sister Sachiko and terrorizes her until their grandmother throws him out of the house. The scared Sachiko then rushes to make it to work at the cafe and sees Nanmaru there. She asks him to meet her privately at the festival that night. That night at the festival, Nanmaru meets up with Sachiko and learns that there are 2 types of gifted people in Marukami Village: window openers like herself and people within reach like Nanmaru, who can become priests of Mount Marukami. On the other side of the festival, Takashi gets in a fight with some people and is seen using his telekinetic powers to remotely inflict gaping holes in their limbs and dismember them. Meanwhile, Professor Emi notices a bright light at the top of Mount Marukami and takes Tagaya to discreetly check it out. There, they see a group of robbed people performing a ritual. After the ritual finishes, they go to inspect the area and find that there are only 6 of the strange stones remaining. All of a sudden, the robbed people turn back, see Professor Emi and Tagaya, and furiously charge towards them. The robbed men attack Tagaya and Professor Emi until the professor declares that they haven't witnessed anything consequential. Professor Emi takes the injured Tagaya back to the hotel and tells all her students to return to Tokyo the next day while she stays for a couple of more days. The next day, Nanmaru sees Skachi early in the morning to bid her farewell and take her number so that they can keep communicating. Takashi starts looking for Nanmaru and follows his trail to the university in Tokyo, where he meets up with him to discuss his telekinetic powers. Takashi reveals that he's also part of the Within Reach group of people, and after observing Nanaru's powers, shows him how to concentrate his mind and harness his powers to make a greater impact. He also shows Nanmaru how to use only his hands to make a deadly dimension ball, and how to throw it onto his targets, and explains their ability to reach anything with the deadly dimension ball is what gave them the group name Within Reach. In Marukami, 2 men from Tokyo arrive, and the town council becomes concerned with the constant arrival of outsiders. Meanwhile, Professor Emi gets a call from Professor Marukami, who tells her that he's alright, and advises her to return to Tokyo. Elsewhere, as a councilman gives a speech about his plans for the future of Japan, a Within Reach person remotely murders him in front of everyone. Professor Emi returns to the university in Tokyo, and Nanmaru demonstrates his new skill to the group, which fascinates Tagaya and his partner Sakurago, while the professor deduces that whoever taught Nanmaru the skill might be responsible for the murder of the construction man. Nanmaru later receives a call from Takashi, who informs him that he needs his help for something. Sakachi goes to visit her Within Reach great-uncle, who is a master of the villagers, and who warns that strange men have come to look for people like himself, Takashi, and Professor Marukami. An elderly man named Masumoto is informed by his subordinates that his orders to kill the councilman have been carried out without a hitch, which he's pleased with. Takashi approaches Nanmaru and registers him in a seminar he runs with his partner, where they host people with special skills. Nanmaru gullibly joins the seminar and demonstrates his skills to eager young students who pay a lot of money for the show. Nanmaru is happy to get large amounts of money as his share, and even considers retiring. Meanwhile, Aki follows Takashi and his friend and records them as they discuss Nanmaru's foolishness. On the other side of campus, Professor Emi continues to study the Marukami village and the Tanabata festival, Tagaya and Sakurago, and reaches a peculiar confusion that the ancient Marukami villagers used the Gregorian calendar to set the dates of the festival even before the Gregorian calendar came into official use in Europe. Meanwhile, Aki plays the record for Nanmaru, who feels betrayed and quits the seminar after having a blowout fight with Takashi. Sakachi runs into Yoriyuki Marukami, who admits to killing Toshio and promises to help her stop the nightmares. The Council of Marumaki is concerned with the increased activities of the outsiders and convenes in a meeting led by Sakachi's uncle. Elsewhere, Yoriyuki goes to see Masumoto and kills all his men using dimension balls when the old man threatens him. He then tells Masumoto that he will join his group for a short period of time and reveals his disfigured facial features to the shock of the old man. Nanmaru runs into a crowd of people panicking over a baby locked in a car, at risk of having heat stroke, and uses his power to make a hole in the window so that the door can be opened and the baby can be saved. The mother thanks him while the crowd cheers him on and films him. Later that day, Nanmaru sees the events reported on the news with everyone curious as to his identity. Takashi then uses this event as a base to go around town, making holes in different government buildings, which gives him the nickname the Gouger. Professor Marumaki joins the council of the Marumaki people as they discuss how to stop Takashi. Sakachi and the council people go to Tokyo to stop Takashi. Sakachi delivers a handwritten letter from Professor Marumaki to Professor Emi and joins Nanmaru in searching for Takashi. The townspeople find Takashi in the seminar room, where he has gathered students by telling them he can train them to develop special powers. Nanmaru, Sakachi, and the people have a face-off with Takashi, but he turns the students against the Marumaki people. This standoff is interrupted by Yoriyuki, who scolds Takashi and threatens him to drop his con and follow him. Yoriyuki then threatens to attack Namnaru, but Sakachi fights for his safety. Later that day, the townspeople and Sakachi inform Nanmaru that the power should never be used outside of the village. In the evening, Nanmaru takes Sakachi out to dinner, and when they return to his apartment, she takes off her clothes and shows him her bag full of scars as a reason why she's so against the power. Sachiko narrates her childhood story that her mother was in love with Yoriyuki, but couldn't marry him because of traditions. Then, her mother was forced to marry her father, who was abusive to Takashi, who in turn let out his frustration on Sakachi, hence the scars on her back. Yoriyuki kept training Takashi, who one day attacked his father with a dimension ball and killed him. Her mother couldn't handle the stress and took her life on Mount Marumaki in front of Yoriyuki and her. Namnaru comforts Sakachi before she leaves for the village. Namnaru then gets a job as a cleaner and starts working. Professor Emi combs through Professor Marumaki's letters and finds clues. She does some research and shares her findings with her small group that the ancient Marumaki villagers used the solar year instead of the Western calendar, as they thought, and that the 7 days of celebration meant 3 days before and after the solar solstice. One day, as Nanmaru takes a nap, he has the same nightmare as Sachiko and sees her struggling to keep afloat. She hears him scream her name and warns him not to pass through the window as she falls through it herself. Aki joins a detective named Sato in investigating the bizarre occurrences around town, like the disappearances of ships, planes, and boats. One day the duo follows Yoriyuki and Takashi closely, but are knocked out by their guards before they can see anything definitive. A few days later, as Nanmaru relaxes on the job with his partner, they see a giant dimension ball eclipsing them. The ball continues to travel to where multiple buildings stand tall, explodes, and half of a building vanishes with no trace. Yoriyuki is seen maneuvering the dimension ball and sending it into the building, while explaining to Takashi that he wants to stop the gloom in his heart and end the nightmare. All hell breaks loose in the city and everyone starts running around in every direction, while the government issues a state of emergency in the metropolitan area of Tokyo. Sakachi watches the news and checks on Nanmaru to see if he is okay, while her uncle is contacted by Professor Emi, hoping to pick his brain about the incident. Elsewhere, Aki and Sato are tied up to chairs in a warehouse. Sato tries to free himself, but the guard comes and breaks his fingers as he screams in agony. Professor Emi then decides to return to Marumaki village once more to find clues and help prevent all the unnecessary casualties and destruction. Tagaya and his partner join her. One day, when Nanmaru returns to his apartment, he finds that his door lock has been blasted through and panics. He enters the apartment cautiously and finds Takashi waiting for him. Nanmaru is furious that Takashi was with Yoriyuki at the time of the destruction and didn't do anything to stop Yoriyuki and screams at him. Then Takashi informs Nanmaru that he might not get to see Sakachi for a while, and sincerely tells him to pass his apology to her for everything. Nanmaru tells him that Sakachi also wants to apologize to him. Yoriyuki then tells Masumoto's people that he has gone rogue and wants to operate on his own and as he pleases. Nanmaru learns about Aki's situation and goes to help her out at the warehouse. As soon as the leader of the guards leaves, he enters the room, neutralizes the remaining guard with a dimension ball, and proceeds to rescue his friend. However, when the guard proceeds to get back up, Nanmaru gets furious and prepares a giant dimension ball that would obliterate the man, but is stopped from discharging it by Aki. Namnao helps Aki and Sato, and they safely leave the warehouse. Outside, Nanmaru notices that the jewel-shaped protrusion that appears on all of the within reach's forehead has started growing on his forehead. Masumoto calls Yoriyuki to discuss what his motives are. Yoriyuki snubs the old man, and before Masumoto can leave to warn the Prime Minister, Yoriyuki rushes out and discharges a giant dimension ball, which sends a huge part of the city into non-existence. Nanmaru rides his bike on the empty streets of Tokyo, as a stay-home order has been issued by the government until the situation is clarified and figured out. He meets up with Professor Emi, Tagaya, and Aki, and starts the journey to Marumaki Village. There the council welcomes them, and they sit together to discuss the current situation. However, the villagers hesitate to share secrets of the village with outsiders, which irritates Nanamaru into screaming and scolding them. The villagers relent and make an appointment for the next day to take the guests to see Sakachi's uncle to discuss the matter. Meanwhile, Yoriyuki and Takashi also arrive in the village and head to Takashi's uncle to speak with him. There, Yoriyuki threatens the old man by telling him that he's going to uncover the foolishness of the old fables that have been passed from generation to generation in the small town, so that he can finally stop the nightmares once and for all. Then Yoriyuki gets up and proceeds to leave, but senses that there is danger looming outside the door. He opens the door nonetheless and finds an army of combat-ready soldiers aiming to open fire. He leaves the door open and runs to the side door as Takashi follows. On the other side of town, the villagers and Nanmaru's group make headway and approach Sakachi's uncle's house, discussing various things of the village amongst themselves. Inside the house, Takashi and Yoriyuki take the soldiers on and attack them with their dimension balls, but unfortunately, they can't save Takashi's uncle as he is fatally injured in the crossfire. Takashi and Yoriyuki run outside and kill many soldiers, but just as they proceed to leave, Takashi is fatally shot. As the group gets closer to the master's house, they hear gunshots coming and run to see what's going on. They run to the house and are shocked to see the bloodshed. Sakachi's uncle gasps for air as he tells the villagers that Yoriyuki and Takashi have invited outside blades to his house. The master dies right after. Outside, Yoriyuki carries the badly injured Takashi to the woods behind the house, hoping to get him away, but Takashi succumbs to his wounds, and Yoriyuki makes his escape. Nanmaru, Sakachi, and Aki follow the gunshots outside, and Sakachi is devastated to find her brother dead. Nanamaru comforts her. Professor Emi walks around the house and is amazed to see Kasasagi, a symbol from the old Marumaki tribal flag, stamped in blood on one of the windows. The police arrive at the late master's house and cordon it off. The villagers proceed to the police station to answer questions, while Nanmaru and his friends proceed to return to their hotel. Sakachi's grandmother appears out of nowhere and asks Nanmaru to follow her to a safe house as per the orders of the new master, Professor Marumaki. Bewildered, Nanmaru joins Sakachi and her grandmother at the safe house, while the rest return to their hotel. That night, Nanmaru and Sakachi stay up most of the night talking and telling each other about their nightmares. Nanmaru then passes Tishiko's message and tells Sakachi how sorry her brother was for everything. The next day at breakfast, Nanmaru asks Sakachi's grandmother if he can go see his friends at the hotel, but she denies his request. Then the police come barging into the house and go through the rooms. While her grandmother deals with the men, Sakachi sneaks Nanmaru out of the house and they escape. Aki goes to the local cafe and records the local people talking about a gathering organized for later that night to discuss the latest developments. Later that night, Professor Emmy and the students go to the place of gathering and watch discreetly as the villagers get into a standoff with the police, who order them to stay inside. Then Masumoto's soldiers come and demand the people to tell them Yoriyuki's whereabouts, which the people refuse. Nanmaru appears and proposes to discuss with Yoriyuki to ask him what he wants. All of a sudden, Professor Marukami appears, introduces himself to Nanmaru, and reveals the jewel-sized stone on his forehead. The police, the soldiers, and the police agree to sit down and discuss with Nanmaru and the villagers. During the discussion, the villagers promise to assist the police in capturing Yoriyuki, while the police promise to never bother the town after that. Professor Marumaki invites Professor Emmy and her students to his lab. When they arrive, Professor Marumaki apologizes to Professor Emmy and his students for worrying them and causing them inconveniences. Then he starts narrating the story of the Marumaki village and reveals that the bloody handprint with the Kasasagi flag found in the master's houses of Yoriyuki's. He then reveals the flag symbols come from the shadow the sun casts on Mount Marumaki during the festival of Tanabata. Professor Marumaki explains the story of the Marumaki village, that 1,000 years ago, bird-like creatures came to Marumaki Mountain and were welcomed by the shocked humans, worshipped and associated with good harvest. And so the people started waiting for them every year by lighting fires on top of Mount Marumaki. The Kasasagi took advantage of this and chained the people in fear and loyalty, which resulted in continuous, fearful nightmares of falling through the window of loneliness, restraining the villagers from leaving, and entangling them into fiercely protecting the village from outsiders. The professor proposes to the villagers to bait Yoriyuki into coming to Mount Marumaki, and takes a few of the people, including Professor Emmy and her students, to the mountain to wait. There, Yoriyuki reveals himself and threatens to destroy the mountain by making a giant dimension ball. As he recites the pain, fear, and loneliness he has suffered, Sachiko asks him to take her with him through the scary window. As Sakachi goes towards him, Nanmaru intervenes and stops her from being pulled into doom. Yoriyuki then hallucinates about Sachiko's mother as he throws the dimension ball on himself. Professor Marumaki and the rest run away to save themselves, while Yoriyuki and the mountain disappear from the face of the earth for good. Then, after a couple of months, everyone returns to their normal life. Professor Emmy moves in with Professor Marumaki away from the city. Tagaya continues his masters, while Aki and Sato start a relationship. The Marumaki villagers rebuild the mountain and continue holding the Tanabata festival, loyally awaiting the return of the Kasasagi. Nanmaru opens a unique swap market where people come together to exchange items without the use of money. The jewel stone beginning to grow on his forehead disappears for lack of use of the power. The movie ends as Nanmaru travels to meet with the girl of his dreams, Sakachi. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.